Hello, welcome to Wargamer. I'm your host, Rob, and in this video, we are going to be looking at the Soulblight Gravelords Battletome, released by Games Workshop in 2025. We're going to be looking at all of the units, all of the army special rules, and I'll be looking at all of it and talking about it all as we go through. So hopefully you enjoy what is a massive, massive book with loads of different units. But because I recognize some people don't necessarily want to listen to an hour and a half of absolutely everything, I'm actually recording this video having done the review, and I'm going to give you a quick TLDR at the beginning of the video so you can just kind of get some quick thoughts from me. It's a bit like conclusion at the beginning, right? And then we'll dive into all the info. Importantly, several of the miniatures or model ranges that were in the last or in the battle pack or have been in the Soulblight Gravelords book have actually gone away. I've got a list here actually. Torgillis is gone, his special character. Gorslav is gone. The Zombie Dragon is gone. The Vampire Lord and Zombie Dragon is gone. The Terrorgeist, the Vargheists, the Vicrus Bloodborne, the Korgasi Night Guard, and Halgrim are all gone, and it's still an absolutely giant roster. There's also loads of new units as well, and I think a lot of people will be wondering, because this will go up on a Friday before pre-order, should you get the launch box? And the launch box is not too bad. The Barrow Knights are really good, and the Barrow Guard are not too bad either. And then the character that's in that launch box or FOMO box is pretty useful. So not a bad box to have if you were thinking about getting it. Definitely not what I would have said about the Gits box as an example in the same situation. Looking at a quick TLDR of what I would potentially be picking up here over the next few weeks. If you're new to Soulblight Gravelords, I probably would be thinking about getting Vhordrai and some Blood Knights. Going the other way, I would definitely be thinking about picking up Barrow Knights as well, because I think that's fun. There's a bunch of little interesting characters, see if they take your fancy. Nagash is also always a really excellent option. And then for infantry or cavalry, I definitely feel like it's Blood Knights, Barrow Knights, and Barrow Guard. But there's some interesting cases for things like Vargheists, for doing battle tactics, which are fun. Fellbats, also the same thing. And then the terrain feature is pretty necessary because you need it for your battle trait for returning units back. So that's my quick TLDR of stuff that you might need to pick up if you're thinking about getting into it. The manifestation law, you'll have to kind of listen to my deep review about that and see what you think. Anyway, let's go look at all the rules. Hope you enjoyed the video. Thank you to everyone on my Patreon for supporting me. The first thing we're going to look at are the battle traits, which are the army special rules. The first three to do with setting up your terrain feature and putting units in reserve, and also bringing them out of reserve, which means setting them up off the board. Okay, so the first thing we're going to look at are ancient burial sites, which is a once per battle ability across the army that you use in the deployment phase. If there is a friendly cursed sepulchre or sepultura, which I'll be calling it from now on, which is your terrain feature, which we're going to talk about in just a moment, already on the board or on the battlefield, you can set up 2 additional cursed sepulturas on the battlefield. The first must be set up more than 3 inches from all units, objectives, and other terrain features. Now, a quick point before we go any further is this does mean it can be put into your opponent's territory, which is pretty fun, and then maybe used to do some clever shenanigans. However, the restriction that it needs to be 3 inches away from terrain, and with predetermined maps being set onto missions, it's really hard probably to deploy these, which is something we've seen exactly from the Skaven and their Norholes. Very recently, literally a few days ago, that has been FAQ'd to being able to be set up within 1 inch of other terrain features. So I would assume that eventually this will get FAQ'd the same. The reason that this is different to what is now happened with the Norholes is that this book was written over a year ago. So that's just some nice clarity that I think right now when you're deploying these things, it might be quite hard to do. But in the future, it's probably going to get a little bit easier because they've recognized it's been difficult to do in Norholes. Okay, so that's first one that you set up. Although it says it's the first one, it's technically going to be the second one that you've set up on the board. And then the second one, technically the third one that you've set up, must be set up wholly outside enemy territory and more than 3 inches from all units, objectives, and other terrain features. Probably going to be changed to 1 inch. There's a designer's note, which is going to explain everything, because I guess I've already been a tad confusing, where the original cursed sepultura is set up in step 1 of the deployment phase using the deploy faction terrain ability. So you do have 3 pieces of your terrain feature. The first one will be set up in step 1, and then these other 2 pieces are set up in step 3 of the deployment phase after armies have been deployed. So that gives you a little bit of insight into where that army is probably going to try and go, where you maybe try and bring models back from, which is nice, with your first one being in your territory. So that's what you're going to set up. And I think we should probably just immediately go and look at what this does, because it's going to be fairly important. So the terrain feature itself has got 8 health and a 4-up save. And it has 2 special rules, which is going to apply to all 3 of them that you'll have on the board at the start of the game. In Age of Sigmar 4, you are able to destroy terrain features, not generic terrain features, so the ones that you'd see on a map, so like your random hills and forests and buildings that you normally have. Faction terrain, though, definitely is destroyable. This got 8 health and a 4-up save, so it's not that survivable, and you probably kill it pretty quick. It's got 2 special abilities. The first passive is the Locus of Sheesh. Each time a friendly Soulblight Gravelords wizard casts a summon spell from the manifestations of the Grave Law, you can measure the range and visibility from this terrain feature instead. So there is a manifestation law where you summon endless spells available specifically to Soulblight Gravelords, which we'll cover at some point in the book. And this is a really great ability if those spells are good, but kind of like a bit of a preface, having read them already on the community site, they're not that great. So some of the, especially compared to some of the other generic spell laws, which are more effective. However, maybe over time they'll get buffed or increased, and which could really make this much better. The other special ability, Leeching Soil, gives you a passive where each time a model, friendly or enemy, is slain while it's within 9 inches of this terrain feature, it can heal 1 to this terrain feature. Now that's good, because we really need to try and keep these alive because of the battle trait, which we're going to talk about in a minute. So it's a really nice buff to this unit, so that it can potentially not just immediately die. So we'll have to see if that does work out in the future. But that's nice, because most terrain hasn't got the opportunity to heal. This does. Big thing. A big win. Big win if you're a Soulblight Gravelords fan. Okay, so now we know what the terrain feature does and we know how to set it up. Let's talk about some of the other elements you get from the special rules. The first ability is the Unquiet Dead, which is done in your deployment phase as well, where you pick a friendly Death Rattle. Death Rattle that you can see in bold and Deadwalkers are keywords. Keywords are located at the bottom of battle scrolls, and they give you information, some like, say, hero or monster. Death Rattle and Deadwalkers are certain, narrative unit types that have not been deployed. So you choose either Death Rattle or Deadwalkers. That's going to be your Skeletons, your Barrow Guard, your Black Knights. You set up that unit in reserve in the grave or in reserve. It has now been deployed. You cannot set up more friendly units in the grave than there are on the battlefield. So half your army can be set up in the grave. The other half has to be on the board. And then you have the Rising Dead, where you pick a friendly unit that is in the grave. You set up that unit wholly within 6 inches of a friendly cursed Sepultura, or more than 9 inches from all enemy units, or wholly within 6 inches of the edge of the battlefield, wholly within friendly territory, and more than 9 inches from all enemy units. So if the enemy does kill all of your Sepulturas, then you are going to still be able to bring units back on from the board, from the dead, which is good. That's a nice little feature. So you do have some options, but you don't have tons and tons of options. Okay, but it's good. It's good. It means you can deep strike. That's positive for zoning areas of the board, grabbing objectives early, like screening, maybe even doing tactics. It really depends. So battle tactics. So you do have some options with a ton of different units, which is good. But obviously, only Death Rattle and Deadwalker units being able to be put into reserve means that's limited to some of the units you're going to be able to do it with. Okay, but seeing as the new army boxes and stuff has got a lot of those things in, yeah, that's cool. Okay, our next ability is Deathly Invocation, which is done once per turn across the army in any hero phase. You pick a friendly Soulblight Gravelords hero to use this ability, then you pick up to 3 friendly Death Rattle or Deadwalker units wholly within 12 inches of the hero to be the target. For each target, if the target is hit damaged, you can heal 3 to the target. And if the target is not damaged, you can return a number of same models to the combined health characteristic up to 3. So this is only in your hero phase. Now, This was much more effective during the. It doesn't matter what the battle pack used to do or what characters were in it, which are now missing. But this is an okay ability, and sometimes you'll get other bonuses to this, so you can really start to return a lot of models to your army, which is exactly how you would expect an undead army to do to work. But you got to be wholly within 12 inches. You need heroes to be alive. It only affects Death Rattle and Deadwalkers. So there we go. So this is once per turn in any hero phase, which does mean every hero phase. Let's go. Okay, now our next ability, Endless Legions, is done once per battle round for the army in any movement phase. So a battle round consists of each player's turn, my turn and your turn, and then you're only going to be able to do it once across those 2 turns. Nice. In the movement phase, you can pick a friendly, non-unique Death Rattle or Deadwalkers unit that has started the battle with 2 or more models and that has been destroyed to be the target. You set up a replacement unit with half the number of models from the target unit, rounding up, wholly within 12 inches of a friendly Soulblight Gravelords hero, or wholly within 6 inches of a friendly Cursed Sepultura. It must be set up more than 9 inches from all enemy units. That's a great ability. It doesn't cost you a command point. You don't have to roll a dice, but you can only do it once per battle round. But you can do it in your opponent's movement phase, which is pretty nice. That's very good, especially for maybe jumping on an objective that they were planning on maybe trying to do something with. You got to be 9 inches away, right? Maybe setting yourself up for a battle tactic in the future. It's a really strong ability, and in the past has been kind of the sleeper ability for how Soulblight Gravelords players have been able to really show really high skill expression and also be able to win games. So it's a very good ability, but it's hard to use. If it is your movement phase, you can set up any replacement unit more than 3 inches from all enemy units instead of more than 9 inches. But if you set up within 9 inches of enemy units, it cannot use charge abilities this turn. So now you can set them up even closer if you want to, but no charging. So you can use it again for capping objectives, doing other stuff. Your opponent does have counter charge's ability to try to stop this. This is ability here. So there we go. And then our last ability is our only ability that's going to affect the vampire keyword. As you can see, everything so far has been to help and benefit Deadwalkers and Death Rattle. So the vampire keyword is only specifically called out here. You get the ability the Hunger, which is once per turn at the end of any turn, which does mean every turn. And you can pick each friendly vampire unit that used a fight ability this turn to be the targets. Heal D3 each target, and heal 2d3 target instead if it destroyed an enemy unit this turn using a fight ability. Healing D3 at the end of each turn is nice, especially on characters. One of the main ways, especially with multi-wound characters, to heal is to use the Rally, which is a generic command ability. However, being able to do it twice, doing it at the end of every turn is really, really effective, especially when you're locked in combat, because you can't do Rally when you're in combat. So overall, as an allegiance set, there isn't much here that is it doesn't have very specific benefits. What it does, it gives you a better strategy for the army. It allows you to put stuff in reserve, bring stuff back from the dead, and then occasionally bring models back and heal a little bit to vampires. So it's not super complex, but it does give you quite a lot of broad options, how you're going to deploy, how you're going to play, which is very interesting for this army. Some of obviously the infantry can be slower, so being able to move it up the board that much faster via setting up in the grave is excellent. And then the healing with the vampires is good because they're normally frontline combat characters. So overall, not bad. Let's move on. The next thing we're going to look at are the battle formations, and we're gravely serious about these. These are your special rules that you write down on your army list, and you choose one of the 4 battle formations, like a sub-faction, to play for the game that you're going to play or at an event over the weekend. The first one, the Legion of Sheesh, gives you a passive called Horror Unending, where you can pick one additional target when using the Deathly Invocation ability, which is the ability we just talked about, where you're going to be able to return models to Death Rattle units. So not too bad, especially if you're planning on going on multiple small units. Lots of healing across the board there. Could be okay. The Bacchanal of Blood battle formation gives you the passive, the Aristocracy of the Night, where you add 1 to casting rolls for friendly vampire units that are not in combat, which is great. And then you add 1 to wound rolls for combat attacks made by friendly vampire units that charge in the same turn, which is also great. Generally, pretty popular. +1 to cast is really good, especially early game when you're going to get a lot of manifestations out or maybe do your spell lore. Later on, +1 to wound is a great buff. There's a lot of minuses to wound in Age of Sigmar 4, more than there was in Age of Sigmar 3. So pluses to wound are even more effective than they were. It's pretty nice. So that's a pretty good one and a pretty popular one. The next one, the Death Stench Drove, has the ability Drag Down and Torn Apart, which is done once per turn at the end of any turn, which does mean every turn, where you pick up to 3 friendly Deadwalkers, which is going to be your zombies, your dogs, your Direwolves is what they're called actually, sorry, and your Fellbats. And you pick 3 of those units that are in combat, so they have to already be in combat. Then they make a pile-in move for each target. Then pick an enemy unit in combat with a target and roll a d3 on a 2+ and inflict an amount of mortal damage on the enemy unit equal to the roll. Doesn't sound like a lot. Genuinely, it doesn't, but has been a pretty popular ability played across multiple different factions, especially if you're running something like a swamp list or a DPT, which is a damage per turn list, where what you're trying to do is just constantly do damage, chip at the enemy, make them get locked in, make it so they can't move on to objectives. It's a fast game. You've only got 5 turns. You've got to jump on objectives to do stuff. You've got to get to certain parts of the board to be able to do battle tactics. Then just keep chipping mortal damage onto units. Can be more effective than it reads on paper. And then Death March, the Tides of Bones and Blades. You add 1 to the rend characteristic of melee weapons used by friendly death rattle units. So that's going to be all your little skeletons. That charge in the same turn for attacks that target a unit that has fewer models than the attacking unit. So a bit of a double stipulation. You need to have charged, and the unit you're hitting needs to be smaller than the unit that you're using, but then you get +1 rend. That's really great in the right situation. And I'm sure lots of people are going to run around with lots of Black Knights intending to hit, especially the most popular army in the game right now, Stormcast, hitting them and getting an additional rend against them. Pretty positive. The double stipulation does mean you've got to make sure you're charging, got to make sure that unit is smaller. Obviously, really effective if you're fighting those big character models that we see on the board, like, you know, your big dragons or, you know, your great and clean ones or something similar. You don't really see a lot of those, but something similar like that. Very effective. So you got like a lot of choices here. I think even though they're not necessarily brilliant. Most battle formations aren't super brilliant, but there are some choices which will have some small impact on your army, which is good. I like the Bacchanal of Blood. I think Death March will be popular for certain armies, and I think Death Stench Drove will also be popular as well. Let me know what your favorite is. On your army list, you're also going to choose one of your heroes, not a unique hero, so like a named hero, like one of the vampire heroes, Nagash, there you go. But one of the other heroes, and it doesn't have to be your general, is going to get to choose a heroic trait. There are 3 to choose from, and easily the most popular one and the best one is the Lash of the Sire, which in your hero phase, you can pick another friendly Soulblight Gravelords unit. That's good. That encompasses all of the units in the book. Within this unit's combat range to be the target. You roll a dice, and on a 2-up, if the target is not in combat, it can move d6 inches, but it cannot move into combat during any part of that move. And if the target is in combat, it can make a pilot move. This is really excellent because what it can do is it can increase the threat range of some of your really fast units. So potentially making the move up to 6 inches further, which your opponent has to allow for. They have to be like, oh, you're definitely going to move. You're definitely going to roll the 6, which means, you know, if you also move 12, now you're moving 18 inches. That's a real worry, which is good. You don't have to then pick that unit. You could do another unit that you're going to pick to go do a battle tactic or something. So it gives you a lot of tactical flexibility as long as you can roll a 2+. So it's really excellent. The other ability, Unbending Will, in your hero phase, lets you pick a friendly Death Rattle or Deadwalkers unit that has 2 or more models older than 12 inches. And then add a d6 to the target's control score, which in the right situation is maybe going to be okay, but actually is really bad compared to Lash of the Sire. And then finally, Unhinged Rampager is a passive where you can reroll charge rolls to this unit in your charge phase, which isn't too bad. However, with a Lash of the Sire, you'll be able to be d6 inches closer, which is probably mathematically more effective. So those are the 3 to choose from, but really there's just 1 to choose from, and you're going to choose the Lash of the Sire. Also on your army list, you're allowed to choose a hero that's not a named one like Nagash, and you can give them an Artefact of Power. Of the 3 deathly heirlooms to pick from, my favorite straight off the bat is the Amulet of the Graves, where once per battle in your hero phase, if there are fewer than 3 friendly cursed sepulturas on the battlefield, you can set up a cursed Sepultura on the battlefield more than 9 inches from all enemy units, more than 1 inch from all friendly units, and more than 3 inches from all objectives and other terrain features. This gives you a nice ability to relocate where you're going to put that down, especially as in the movement phase is when you bring a unit back from the dead, and also when you're able to bring units up from reserve. So it gives you some tactical flexibility, and also it's just going to annoy your opponent because they've killed one and now they've got another one to kill, which is fun. That's my favorite. The next one, the Terminus Clock, is done in your hero phase where you roll a dice, and on a 3+, until the start of your next turn, you subtract 1 from casting rolls for enemy wizards while they're within 18 inches of this unit. So a minor buff that happens occasionally on a 3-up. Not too bothered about that. The passive Shard of Night, where you ignore modifiers to save rolls for shooting attacks that target this unit. Now, if we can find a good 3-up armor save hero that we really want to keep safe from shooting that isn't kept safe by the special ability guarded hero, then this is okay. And shooting can be pretty prevalent in Age of Sigmar in the right situations. So I don't mind that one at all if we can find a unit to put it on. So we'll come back to that. Otherwise, I'm going to choose Amulet of the Graves all the time. So it's a pretty easy next 2.5 years for Soulblight fans. Lash of the Sire, Amulet of the Graves, easy peasy. Don't have to think beyond that for now, but those are your artifacts. The next thing we're going to look at is the spell lore. So these are 3 spells which all of the wizards in your Soulblight Gravelords army will be able to access and use. One of the spells, Vial Transference, has got the unlimited keyword. You can see it over there. That means that each of your wizards is going to be able to attempt to cast it, whereas the other 2 spells can only be attempted to cast it. You can only attempt to cast them once in your hero phase, if that makes sense. So the only one you can attempt to multicast. But the same character can't attempt to multicast it multiple times. So the first spell, Vial Transference, is cast on a 7. In fact, all of the spells are cast on a 7. So that's your average casting value, which means you're as likely to get it as not. You pick a friendly Soulblight Gravelords wizard to cast this spell and pick a visible enemy unit within 18 inches to be the target. You roll a number of dice equal to the number of models in the target unit. For each 6, you inflict 1 mortal damage on the unit. If any enemy models were slain, then you can heal D3 to the caster. The issue here is that this is what we would call a horde clearing spell. If you had 40 models, you'd be like, wow, I'm going to roll 40 dice and these 6 is going to be a mortal damage. However, the major problem that you have here is that this unit that can handle taking 2 or 3 mortals is the unit with 40 models. And then this is not very effective on elite units. That maybe the main reason to cast this spell or try to use it is for that cheeky heal that you can do in the hero phase, which is nice because that's healing your caster, or healing your big monster who's also a caster, which is an effective way of just trying to get even more health back, which you can include with rally, and also being able to do your battle trait for doing healing. The next spell, Prison of Grief, is cast on a 7 as well. You pick a friendly Soulblight Gravelords wizard to cast this spell and a visible enemy unit within 12 inches, not wholly within 12, and then you cast. And the target has Strike Last until the start of your next turn. So these are both 2 great things. 1, Strike Last, which is great. In combat, you have 3 kind of like steps for combat. You have Strike First, Strike Middle, and Strike Last. This means your Strike Middles, which is most of the units in the game, are going to be able to hit before the Strike Last unit, which is good. So you can really focus down a unit. In addition, the length of time it lasts for, which is until the start of your next turn. So if you cast it on your opponent, they then have their turn, you roll for priority, and then they choose to take a double turn. They now have a unit that's been striking last for 3 whole turns. So it's got also a great length of time on it. The short range is an issue, but it's a really nice toolbox unit. And don't forget, if we use the Lash of the Sire, which we talked about earlier, then we're going to be able to move a unit in the hero phase and then also cast this spell. So it's got an average of 13 to 18 inches in that situation, which is not too bad. Then you got Waste Away. Cast on a 7, you pick a friendly Soulblight Gravelords wizard to cast it, and then you pick an enemy unit within 12 inches. For the rest of the turn, you subtract 1 from the damage characteristic of the target's melee weapons. This is also a great spell. Limited range, but units that have +1 damage, you're not going to be able to take a damage characteristic below 1 because there's a core rule that says that. But this is still excellent for being able to reduce the output that the enemy can do towards you, which is nice. And don't forget, you can just decide to cast these when you want to cast them. You can also cast them in your opponent's turn, which is also really nice because using the command ability to cast a spell in your opponent's turn. It's at -1, so now your casting value is an 8, so it's a little bit more difficult, but ultimately you have 2 good spells there with 1 other spell, which is much better than some other armies have. But, you know, you don't necessarily have a 3d6 charge spell, which would be nice. You don't have a strike first spell. Strike last is probably, in some cases, better than a strike last spell, because it means loads of your units can hit them. So it's actually pretty good, but again, hard to use. You're talking about high skill expression for this army. There are 3 manifestations available to this army. You have Summon Hand of Nagash, which is a 7, and the other 2 are a 6. The Hand of Nagash you set within 18 inches of the caster, and also the same with the Sanguine Swarm, but 9 inches away from the enemy. And with the Unholy Reliquary, not got any of these words right, it's wholly within 18 inches of the caster. Now, don't forget, if we use our terrain feature, the Cursed Sepultura, then we are going to be able to measure from them for specifically only this spell lore. So only this spell lore, we're going to be able to set up manifestations from them. However, and I mean this in the nicest way, they suck. So the first one, the Hand of Nagash, and I'll explain why, is 18 inches of the caster, 9 inches away from the enemy, or 18 inches away from one of your Sepulturas, but 9 inches away from the enemy. It's, I guess, okay in combat with 5 attacks at damage 2. It's pretty much the same as like a foot hero. Hits on a 4 though, which is a bit yikesy. Red one, but it has crit mortals, but you're only rolling 5 dice, so you're probably not getting any mortals. It has no reasons. It sucks. I'm sorry, I'm trying really hard, but we're going to move past this and get to the cool stuff. Any combat phase, you can use Chill Grasp, where you pick an enemy unit in combat with this manifestation, roll a dice, and on a 4+. So you would expect a really big effect for only happening half the time. You've had to cast it. It has to be in combat, which means you need to have charged, or it needs to have been charged. And then if you roll a 4 up, then the target has a maximum control score of 1, which is what you use to hold objectives. It's pretty weak. The other ability, while the target is within 3 inches of the manifestation, the target can use move abilities, which is so fringe, it's unreal. Also, they won't need to use move abilities because you're in the fight phase and they're going to be fighting you. So it's very bad. The other ability, Inescapable Reach, this manifestation can only use this ability if it's not been set up this turn. Remove this manifestation from the battlefield and set it up on the battlefield more than 9 inches from all enemy units. Then roll a d3, and on a 2+, this manifestation can move a number of inches equal to the roll. So you could do a teleport in your movement phase, roll a 3, get 6 inches closer, charge in, do 5 attacks, maybe make it so they can't move and their control score is 1. That's your kind of like best situation, but also all banking on you rolling a charge, rolling a 4+. Yeah, you would roll a d3, which give you a 6-inch charge. If you rolled a 3, 9-inch teleport down to a 6 is a 6-inch charge. But it's bad. So miss me with that hand. That's a pop culture reference I'm going for. Anyway, yes, it's rubbish. Our next manifestation is actually okay. The Unholy Reliquary has got 8 health and a 5+ save. It's got an ability that you do in any combat phase called Draw on Power, where you pick a friendly Soulblight Gravelords hero wholly within 12 inches of this manifestation to be the target. Then you pick one of the 2 following effects. You either heal D3 to the target, or you add 1 to the attack's characteristic of the target's melee weapons for the rest of the turn and banish this manifestation. So you only banish it in the case of adding +1 attacks, which is not bad on a turn when you want to charge. However, the heal D3 constantly in any combat phase, which means every combat phase, is actually pretty effective. On multi-wound models, I love that. You know, a Soulblight Gravelords hero would be Nagash, would be Vhordrai, constantly healing D3 every combat phase to them for units that already have a very high effective health pool is really good. Obviously, combine that with something like the Hunger, which is your battle trait for more healing. Genuinely a good option. And the fact that when you summon this, it doesn't have to be 9 inches away from the enemy means you can do some real good stuff here. So excellent ability, excellent spell. Maybe actually the reason that you would take it is to constantly pop it next to your characters and heal them. So it's very nice. So the next manifestation, or the last one, is the Sanguine Swarm, which is 2 bases. They've got 6 health and a 6+ save, but they share that health pool. as you can see from the multiple part special rule. And if you do kill, like if you do enough health to kill one, you'll kill both at the same time. Each time this manifestation moves, both parts must end within 9 inches of each other. When you summon it, it's 18 inches away from a caster or a Sepultura, 9 inches away from the enemy. And each part of this manifestation is armed with leeching bites, which its melee attack means that it's got 2 lots of 10, which is 20 attacks. 5s and 5s, no rend damage 1 with crit mortals. Now, that isn't going to kill a horde of stuff, and it's not going to punch through an elite unit. But what it is going to do is be really boring, move 12 inches, charge into something that's big, and maybe do 3 mortal damage. Maybe 3 to 5 mortal damage, which is good. So your opponent has to waste time maybe killing it. It's genuinely not too bad. Leeching bites down below. Each time this attack is made, this manifestation scores a critical hit, which is crit mortals. Then you can heal one to this manifestation, which is okay, but it's got a really low health pool of 6, so it probably just gets killed. But you've got the strike last spell and a bunch of other options here. Now, reviewing the whole manifestation lore as a whole, the hand is okay, kind of. The 4+ means it doesn't really do anything, but it's around and it does some stuff. But the Unholy Reliquary is excellent, I'm going to say, because depending on how you build your army for Soulblight Gravelords, your win condition might be keeping your big vampire or one of your big other models alive. Being able to heal D3 each combat phase is actually super effective. And then the Sanguine Swarm will do in a pinch if you're just casting some spells. The other manifestation laws, especially Morbid Conjuration, definitely has more like impactful spells. But another question you need to ask yourself is, are you going to generate enough spell casting? I.e., do you have enough power levels in your army in your list to cast enough spells? That's another question as well. But maybe not as bad as I originally was saying. These two have really sold it for me a little bit, specifically the Reliquary. But again, it depends how you build your list, so you might not choose it. But there's hope. Maybe I would pick it up. Maybe. Having looked at all of the kind of army special rules and everything around it, we're going to start talking about units. And obviously, the first thing we're going to look through are the heroes. And you do get to play Nagash in a Soulblight Gravelords army, the big boss man himself. He is incredibly expensive, but actually that's a bit of a lie because he has a special ability that reduces his points cost massively, which is pretty unique. So he's got 18 health. He's basically a god. Well, he is a god. He's a god of death. 18 health, 3-up save. I think he has a 5-up ward save. He does a 5-up ward save. He's a power level 9 wizard, which means he can cast 9 spells in his turn. You can only have one of them, obviously, and he's also a monster. Incredibly effective. Control score of 10 and moves 10 inches. Good in combat, not brilliant, but good. Adds +2 to his casting rolls for this unit while he's not miscast any spells this turn. If this unit miscasts a spell, you can ignore the restriction that will stop this unit from casting any more spells. So just constantly casting spells, so able to put manifestations on the board really quick. As I said before, that manifestation for healing D3 as well, topping this bad boy up is really good, using the spell lore for being able to cast a spell and then do a mortal with Vile Transference and do another D3. You could heal this guy back up to crazy. Has got a complete meme ability, the Hand of Dust. If you want to go and have a great time around your club, is just go hand of dust a bunch of people. Once per turn, at the end of any turn, which is every turn, pick a visible enemy, hero or monster in combat with this unit to be the target. Then you play a game where you put 2 hands out, hold a dice in one, then you reveal it. I can't ever remember which one it is, but if you pick the right one, your hero lives. If you pick the wrong one, your hero or monster dies. It's tragically bad for game design, but I guess it's fun if you live. Shout out to Ed and Natty, who had the most hilarious game of Warhammer I've ever seen, where I saw one Nagash charge in and fight another Nagash. Then that Nagash survived on 1 wound. Then that Nagash with 1 wound also survived being hand of dusted. And then the Nagash on 1 wound hand of dusted the attacking Nagash. It was an amazing moment. Which I loved. He's also got his own unique spell, cast on 7, called Invocation of Nagash, where this unit can cast his spell more than once per phase. Obviously, he can cast 9 spells. Pick a visible enemy unit holding an 18 of this unit that has not been picked to be the target of this spell, and this turn to be the target, and make cast roll 2d6. If the target is an enemy unit, then you can inflict D3 mortal damage. If the target is a friendly death unit, then you can return a number of same models to the target up to a combined health characteristic of 3, and the target has a 5 at ward save until the start of next turn. So you can kind of be like Oprah, giving out ward saves. You can also return D3 health worth of dudes, or you can do D3 mortal damage, which is, again, super, super effective. And then the last one, Supreme Lord of the Undead. This is the reason he's actually very cheap. Once per battle in your hero phase, you can pick a friendly non-hero, non-unique death unit that has been destroyed to be the target. Set up a replacement unit identical to the target. Most of these return abilities, this is the ability here, most of the return abilities actually only allow you to bring up half the unit strength, but this return it full. So probably the most expensive unit we can take in this army is going to be a reinforced unit of Blood Knights. So send the Blood Knights in, fight, eventually die, bring the whole unit back. Which means however much Blood Knights end up costing, probably like 220. So 440 points, knock that off Nagash's price, feels like a bit of a bargain. All round incredible. If you are building Nagash, you're building a Nagash list. So it's just him, pure focus on what Nagash does. Everything else is just around supporting Nagash. But the book has a lot of support. Strike Last, Heal, a lot of support in here for Nagash. So I could definitely see people wanting to take it. Next up, the brand new Prince Vhordrai with his new sexy model. We got a vampire, a monster, a unique monster down here. He's also a wizard. Don't forget, wizard is worth at least 100 points, so you can knock that straight off his cost. It's also got a 6-up ward save. Now, 18 health and a 3-up saves makes him pretty survivable, which is nice. Also, vampire keyword, so you're going to be able to use that hunger ability to do some heals. So survivability can be fairly high. Also, and what's really fun, with his unique spell, Quick Blood, cast on a 7, this unit has strike first until the start of your next turn, which is really good, until the start of your next turn, which means he's fighting before everybody. What's he like in a fight, Rob? Well, great question. He's got 6 attacks with the Blood Lance, which +1 damage on the charge, Rend 2, 3s and 3s. Not too bad. Not too bad. Then his actual mount, the Short Mare, has got 3 attacks, damage 3, and 7 attacks, damage 2. But they do it on 4s, which is a little bit yikesy. It's also got shooting attack at 10-inch range, which is D6 shots, which is damage 2, and Rend 2, which is surprisingly good. I'm not really sure why Short Mare's better at shooting than fighting, but there we go. So overall, straight off the bat, a survivable frontline melee character. We love that, okay, with a spell that can give strike first. And then also, I guess, because it lasts until your next turn, you could cast in your opponent's turn and do strike last on one of their units and really mess them up. Now, I think the reason that many people are very excited about Vhordrai is his ability, Trail of Crimson, which is a rampage. A rampage is an ability that you do in the combat phase, but you don't need to be in combat to do it. It's quite important to remember. In any combat phase, which means every combat phase, you can declare this unit to make a pile-in move, then pick an enemy unit in combat with it to be the target. You roll a dice. On a 4+, you inflict an amount of mortal damage on the target equal to the roll. So you're either going to do 4, 5, or 6 mortal damage. What's got people really excited about this is Vhordrai moves pretty fast, 12 inches. Got a big base. That's going to be a problem for moving around terrain and being screened and stuff. But if you do charge, you're going to be able to pile in as part of a combat action, but also pile in as part of the Trail of Crimson. That's 2 pile-ins. That's potentially 6 inches of movement. We love that. The other thing you could do is run. So you could run, auto run 6, which is a command ability, plus move 12. That's 18 inches. And then, because of the way the rules work, you're also going to be able to make a pile-in move then, and then pile into combat. And don't forget your weapon range and combat range is 3 inches, which means I run 18 inches, I pile in 3, and then if I can get within 3 inches of an enemy unit, I can then hit them, which gives me a pretty egregious amount of distance that I don't even need to charge, which is fun. Also means I can redeploy and still use the Trail of Crimson. So if you think you've retreated far enough away, this guy's going to be able to redeploy and then move in instead of having to do a counter charge. So it's going to be very difficult to get away from this guy. Very, very difficult. In addition, he's got an ability at the end of any turn called the Saint of Slaughter. And this is super beneficial to all of the other vampires in the army. So this is going to be your Blood Knights, your Askurgan Trueblades, and all your other vampire heroes. You pick a friendly non-monster vampire unit, so all those units I just discussed, that destroyed a unit this turn using a fight ability and is wholly within 12 inches of this guy to be the target. You pick one of the following effects that last for the rest of the battle. Add 2 inches to the movement, add +1 to the attacks characteristic, or add +1 to the damage characteristic. More than one effect can apply to the unit at the same time. However, each effect can only be applied to each unit once. So this means your Blood Knights could potentially get +1 attack and +1 damage, which is very, very scary. They get plus damage on the charge. Obviously, that's how you intend to use this guy. I think for many reasons, Vhordrai is going to be very expensive, but is also going to be very effective. Frontline melee character that's a wizard that can also play in the support role for buffing your units, and also has got that ability to constantly chase you down with a Trail of Crimson, is going to be a really snowballing army. And I can see 10, 20, maybe 30 Blood Knights, and this guy just first turning it up the board, being a real menace. We also know that he's also usable in an Army of Renown, which I'll cover in a separate video to talk about, but very, very cool. Next up, we're going to look at Neferata. Neferata is a support caster, as well as an OK combat fighter. 14 health with a 3-up armor save. We'll take that. Moves 12 inches, control value 5. Great stuff. Is a 2-cast wizard in the support role. Excellent, with a 6-up ward save. Also a War Master. I've neglected to say on the other characters we looked at that they also have the War Master keyword. That means it has to be the general in your army. Unless you have multiple War Masters in which you can choose. And this book has probably got the most War Masters available to them. Anyway, Neferata has got an OK combat profile. We don't need to go through it. Has got a great passive, the Twilight Allure, where you subtract 1 from hit rolls for combat attacks that target friendly Soulblight Gravelords units while they're wholly within 6 inches of this unit. So that's Soulblight Gravelords, so all of the units in the book, great. It's not just like Death Rattle or something. -1 to hit, a great debuff as well. We love that. Has also, in the support role, got the Mortarch of Blood ability, which is done in your deployment phase, where you pick up to 3 friendly Death Rattle infantry or Deadwalker infantry, and each target can immediately use the normal move ability as if it were your movement phase. We love that as well. That's also fantastic. That means you're definitely going to build around Neferata, maybe a bunch of like the Barrow Guard or something, and you can just move them up the board early, grab objectives, start fighting. They die, bring some back. That's probably going to be a thing you can do. Maybe not super strong, but a thing you can do. And then in the combat role, she's also got the ability to like one-shot an enemy hero, which is really fun. She's got a once per turn at the end of any turn ability, where you pick an enemy hero that had any damage points inflicted on it by this unit's Amek-Ha, which is one of her dagger weapons, which has also got Ren 3 against heroes. And then you roll a dice, and on a 5+, the target is automatically destroyed. Okay, amazing. So you got that ability, which is super good. And then she's got her own unique spell called Dark Mist, which is cast on a 7. You pick a visible friendly non-monster Soulblight Gravelords unit wholly within 12 inches to cast a spell on, and ignore modifiers to save rolls for that target, positive and negative. So you can basically ignore Rend until the start of your next turn, which obviously would be good on a really high armor save unit like Blood Knights. So ignore Rend on that unit. Very positive. Great spell. All round, I think she's excellent. I should also mention that, yeah, you could use Direwolves as well for that pre-game move, which is very effective for the Mortarch of Blood. I really like Neffy. I think Neffy's fun. I think Neffy's like the classy pick in the army. You can do some fun stuff. You got some cool tactics. You can always send her in for like that one-shot fight where you're going to try and like kill an enemy hero. She has to survive, but 14 health on a 3-up, that's pretty good. I think she's a really cool model. Great choice. Really fun in the army. Next up, we got Mannfred. Mannfred's another War Master and a level 2 wizard, which is pretty good. That's worth like 150 points on its own. 6-up ward save, and is a hero monster frontline fighter for sure. 14 health with a 3-up save, moves 12 inches. Fast, can fight, can survive, control value 5. He's got a pretty underwhelming sword, which is 6, the Greasevore, the sword of unholy power. is 6 attacks, 3s and 3s, only rend 1, which is 1 less rend than a Rock Guts Clammy Hands, and damage 2. So, basically a Rock Gut, but not as good. Then his mount, Astragas Claws, has got 5 attacks that are damage 3. Okay. Now, as a frontline fighter, he's a little bit better because of his rampage, which is done in the combat phase. In any combat phase, once per turn, you can use Ashgaroth's Hunger. If this unit charges turn, roll a dice on a 3+. This unit has strike first for the rest of the turn. That's pretty fun. Does mean you have to have charged, but if you charge in with Vhordrai, you've got 2 strike first units as well. Do a spell, do some strike last. There's a lot of options available here. Then he's also got his own unique spell, Wind of Death, where you pick a point on the battlefield within 18 inches of the caster, pick up to 3 enemy units within 6 inches of that point, visible to the caster, and make a casting roll of 2d6. Then you roll a d3 for each target. On a 2+, you inflict an amount of mortal damage on a target equal to the roll. So a little bit disappointing, but it is what it is. Also, he's got a good support roll ability called the Sword of Unholy Power, which is a passive. If this model has slain any enemy models this turn, for the rest of the turn, you add 1 to the attacks characteristic of melee weapons used by friendly Death Rattle or Deadwalker units while they're wholly within 12 inches. And that can be really good for increasing the output of units around you, which is nice. Finally, he's got a reaction. You declare the redeploy command for Soulblight Gravelords unit wholly within 12 inches. This unit, the unit using the redeploy command, can move into combat when using that ability. So he can also, like Vhordrai, have a cheeky way of redeploying and getting into combat, which is nice. So it's going to be really difficult if you were to decide to go double dragon and take Mannfred and Vhordrai to be able to get out of the range of these units just getting back into combat. His output is a little bit disappointing. I'm going to throw that out there. I don't think that that's the best. But hopefully, obviously, you can make skeletons much stronger with the sword of unholy power. And that's it. Let me know what you think of Mannfred. Next up, we got Lauka Vai, another name, special character, definitely bratty. Lauka Vai has got 11 health with a 4+ save. He's also got a 6+ ward save and is also a level 1 wizard. So you got to knock 100 points off all of these characters because they are wizards, right? It's really effective. Unique, you can only take 1 of her. So she's kind of a frontline melee fighter as well as a support piece for your unridden monsters or your non-hero monsters. So Lauka Vai has got an Askurgan Rapier with 5 attacks, 3s and 3s, Rend 2. So better than the Sword of Unholy Power that Mannfred's got. Damage 2, so it's not that impressive. And then she's got 3 attacks, 3s and 3s, Rend 3, damage 3. The Rend is really nice. Don't forget also, she's a wizard, so she can throw strike last out there as well. She's definitely not as effective as probably most other units that you can build in this book. But she's got an ability called Nightmare Miasma, where you subtract 1 from the Rend characteristic of melee weapons used by enemy units while they're in combat with this unit. So that's good. So reduce Rend down. Don't forget, we've also got like a minus damage spell. So you can maybe put her in a support debuff role, get her in combat doing some stuff. Also, talking about combat, she's got a rampage where if this unit charged this phase, that's a stipulation, you pick an enemy unit in combat to be the target, roll a dice. The roll is equal to or less than the target's health characteristic. So on a big monster, you're always going to roll below it, so you can do up to 6 mortal damage. But even like Vargheists or elite units, Kroxigor, you're going to be able to do potentially up to 6 mortal damage. That will really up her output potentially. And then she's got a spell called the Queen's Dictat, which is cast on a 7. In your hero phase, you can pick a non-unique Soulblight Gravelords monster wholly within 12 inches of this unit to be the target. They make a casting roll. You pick one of the target's melee weapons. If the target has any companion melee weapons, you must pick one of those and add D3 to the attacks characteristic for the weapon for the rest of the turn. So that means she's in a support role for like some of the non-hero monsters or non-unique Soulblight Gravelords monsters, I should say, more importantly. And obviously there's the new Revenant Draconith that they've released, which is the unridden version of Vhordrai's dragon. So that has got 16 health with, unfortunately, a pretty woeful 5+ save, and it moves 12 inches, got control value of 5. Now that does have some companion weapons, which means you could add D3 to them. So you got 3 attacks, with the Draconic Maw, which if you take Lauka Vai, you can have D3 plus D3. So potentially 6. Hitting on 4s, unfortunately. Wound on 2s, Rend 2, damage 3. And then the Draconic Claws, you've got 7 attacks, hitting on 4s, wound on 2, Rend 1, damage 2. It's also got a shooting attack as well. Now, it does have the ability to do at the end of any turn on a 2-up, potentially pile in, do some mortal damage and do a heal. And this unit can be removed from the battlefield and set up reserve on high, which is a kind of nice ability. So you do this at the end of any turn. It's called Red Ruin, once per turn. So pile in, do a bit of mortal damage, do a heal, and teleport away. Because you can, in the deployment phase, put this unit in reserve in the high above the battlefield, and you can, in your movement phases, bring this unit back on onto the board from reserve. So you can kind of have this deep striking monster, which sounds very scary. Its output is not super great, and its survivability is also pretty low. So I'm hoping its points are quite cheap, because it's quite a fun piece. I would say about 220, maybe, probably about 220 I'd pay for this, points-wise. But with Lauka Vai, you can also improve its output, which is kind of fun. So this is a fun kind of combat support piece with this, but Lauka Vai can definitely make this better. Lauka Vai herself, I'm hoping, is also very cheap as well, around 200 points, because her output's pretty minimal, and her only real job is in the support role for other monsters. Next up, we have the new Blades of the Hollow King set, and these Cursed City rejects that you can see here are phenomenal sculpts. Just want to be very clear. Cadio, Aurelius, and Sisendra, excellent. This is a unique unit, which is 3 independent models, but they're all in one unit with a hero, and one of them is a wizard with a 6-up ward save. And because there's 3 bases and they've got a 6-up health on a 4-up armor save, that does mean this unit has 18 health. And depending on the points cost, like 200 points, let's say, maybe 180, 200, then you're going to get a lot of health, like as a unit that can go stand on an objective, maybe do some battle tactics, do some stuff from this. They move 6 inches, which is kind of slow, but it's okay. Now, in combat, you would think that Cadio, a famed vampire, was really good, but you'd be wrong. He's got 5 attacks, 3s and 3s, Rend 2, damage 2, with crit auto wound. Then the assassin, Sisendra, has got 8 attacks with crit mortals, but 3s and 3s, Rend 1, damage 1. And then the snake attached to the wizard has got 2 attacks that do damage D3. Okay, so for output, they're obviously much worse than you can get from a comparable unit that you would buy for 200 points. But don't forget, you are already getting a level 1 wizard, so it's already worth 100 points worth of value. Now, Solia, the tutor, which is in any combat phase ability, this unit can use this ability while its Cadio Ezekiel is on the battlefield. You pick one of the following effects to apply. This unit has a 5-up ward save, and this unit's greatsword has crit mortals, one of the 2. You can pick one of the 2. Now, you're not going to pick the crit mortals because he's only got 5 attacks, but you are going to pick the 5-up ward save. So this does mean that you could potentially have a 18 health, 4-up armor save, 5-up ward save unit in combat for some amount of points. Okay? 200 would be crazy. 400 would be crazy, but for different reasons. And also, speaking of it as a caster, Aurelius, this unit can use this ability while Aurelius is on the battlefield. Pick one of the following effects to apply for the rest of the turn. Add 1 to the unit's power level, so it's a 2-cast wizard. Or each time a casting roll is made for this unit, you can re-roll 1 of the dice, making it quite an effective caster. So the real question you've got to ask yourself is, are you lacking for wizards? Are you lacking for a unit that can hold an objective? This is a kind of hybrid unit that does both. You've got a lot of wizards. Everything we've talked about so far, I think, has been a wizard. So you've got a lot of options for wizards in this book. And lastly, you've got a unique spell for this unit, which is cast on a 7, while you have Cadio in the little team. Because obviously, if you take 6 health damage, or 6 damage, you can remove one of the models. You can just remove Cadio if you want to, but you probably should remove the others. If the target is an enemy unit, inflict D3 mortal damage on it. If the target is a friendly Death Rattle or Deadwalkers unit, subtract 1 from the wound rolls for combat attacks that target that unit for the rest of the turn. So you can make a unit of Death Rattle or Deadwalkers be -1 to wound, which is going to make them very survivable as well. If you decide to be power level 2, then you can also cast a spell for -1 damage, and you could really reduce down their effectiveness. of the enemy unit that's trying to hit you. I would say that this is kind of interesting depending on the points. The models are great. 11 out of 10. Next up, we've got Sekhar, another unique character, another vampire in this book. 6 health with a 3-up save, moves 6 inches, and control value of 2. She's a 2-cast wizard, so you've got another option for a 2-cast wizard with a 6-up ward save. She's also a hero, obviously. The thing to say with that survivability, 6 health, 6-up ward, 3-up ward save, she's also got an ability called the Serpentine Agility, which is a passive, where if the unmodified hit roll of an attack that targets this unit is 1 to 4, the attack fails and the attack sequence ends, which means you can only hit her on 5s and 6s. You pretty much always miss on 1, 2, and 3, 1 and 2s anyway, because most stuff hits on 3s. In which case, you're only really reducing a third of the damage, and you do get hit a third of the time, so that's something to watch out for. But that's going to help with her survivability. You do have the ability to give up the Serpentine Agility to do a random amount of mortal wounds once per battle via the Time Swallower's Maw, but it's very ineffective, so that's a fringe case use. Probably the reason that you're going to take Sekhar, though, is for the spell Death's Construction, which is cast on a 7. Pick a visible enemy unit within 12 inches, and until the start of your next turn, while they're wholly within 6 inches of this unit, for any Soulblight Gravelords unit cannot be picked to be the target of abilities used by the target other than fight abilities, which means things like rampages and shooting and a load of other stuff as well. So that's actually a really effective ability for keeping units safe, as well as herself safe thanks to Serpentine Agility. Real question is do you need that kind of support from Sekhar? She's a bit slow, so you're not going to necessarily be able to keep up with like cavalry or monsters. So I guess the real question here is, do you need another 2-cast wizard, and you need her to do this job? Moving on to another named vampire. Is he a vampire, actually? No, he's not a vampire. Oh, he's a vampire. That's true. Is Radukar the Wolf. Radukar the Wolf has got 7 health, a 4-up save, a 6-up ward save, and is a level 1 wizard. He's got his own unique spell, which is cast on a 6, where until the start of your next turn, you can reroll charge rolls for friendly Soulblight Gravelords infantry while they're holding within 12 inches. Perfect. Not the best, I guess, but you do want some infantry to get in. Am I going to spend points on this guy to cast a spell to make it happen? No. Especially when his combat profile is 5 attacks, 3 3s, rend 1, damage 2. Or I should probably just say that it's standard hero profile, which is like fine, but it's not good. And then he's got a passive called Call to the Hunt, where if this unit charges turn, for the rest of the turn, add 1 to the wound rolls for combat attacks made by friendly Death Rattle and Deadwalkers units while they're wholly within 12 inches, which is pretty nice, especially if you maybe combo this up with Mannfred to get +1 attack. So you got +1 attack, +1 to wound on some of these guys. That could be really, really cool. I'm just going to shout out right here that Radukar the Beast, the Wolf, this version is an amazing sculpt. And I wish his rules were cooler, so I'd take him more often in a game. The other Radukar the Beast, has got 12 health, a 4-up save, moves 8 inches, has also a level 1 wizard with a 6-up ward save, also a unique character. Now, his Blood Slit Claws have got crit mortals, and with 6 attacks, 3s, rend 2, damage 3. So much more of a juicy combat character. And then his Vargheists Bloodborne Piercing Blades have got 6 attacks, 3s and 3s, rend 1, damage 2. So all around, much more output than the other version of Radukar. In addition, he's got a rampage where once per turn at the end of any turn, if this unit is not in combat, it can move D6 inches. It can move into combat, which is fantastic. That's such a fun ability. I've said this when I did the Battle Pack review, Radukar the Beast would be something I would include in a vampire list because it's a really fun mechanic that you could do some really fun stuff with. It's also got a passive called Call to the Hunt, where if this unit charges turn for the rest of the turn, or it's the same as the other Radukar, you get +1 wound for Death Rattle and Deadwalkers. And also it's got a spell called Armor of the Night, which is cast on 6, and you subtract 1 from hit rolls and wound rolls for attacks that target this unit for the rest of the turn. So that's a pretty good -1 to hit, -1 to wound, 12 health, 4-up save, a ton of damage, and then the ability to just pop him in and out with the Beast Will Out, which is very fun. So I like Radukar, if not necessarily because he's a good support piece, thanks to Call to the Hun, but because he's a really fun melee piece, thanks to the Beast Will Out and an actual output profile, which is good. Our next character is Ivya Volga. She's got 5 health, 5 up save, move 6 inches, control value 2. Has a shooting attack, which is garbage, and a combat profile to match. She's got an ability where you can -1 to hit rolls from attacks that do target her, thanks to Shrieking Swarm, and a spell that you cast on a 6, where you subtract 5 from the control score of enemy monsters while they're in 12 inches. But seeing as that enemy monster would just nuke her into, maybe nuke 2 of her into the earth, it's not really worth casting. And then it's got a passive called Behemoth's Bane, where you subtract 2 from the attack characteristics of the enemy monsters, melee weapons while they're in combat with this unit. Garbage, don't take. In disappointing that Games Workshop have written rules for her. Now, next up, I love Belladama Volga. She's pretty vibes. She's 9 health, 4 up save, moves 8 inches, control value 5. Worth pointing out, control value 5, especially thanks to her passive, the First of Vycross, where you add 3 to the control score of friendly Radukar the Wolf, Radukar the Beast, Ivya Volga, Lady Annika, and Kritza units while they're within 18 inches of this unit. So she can really up the tempo of the control scores for some of these characters, most of whom you won't take, but you might take Radukar. She's also got a really great spell, which really makes Direwolves super effective, especially if then you do something like, like pregame move them or whatever you might want to do. Cast on a 7, under the Killing Moon, you pick up to 3 visible friendly direwolf units wholly within 18 inches. And then you add 1 to the rend characteristic of the target's melee weapons. Great. And the targets can ignore the effect of the Beast ability. Beast is an ability that means that their control score can only ever be 1. But this immediately makes direwolves, who you can have up to 20 in a unit, I think. Maybe I'm making it up. I think it's 20 in a unit. They've got 2 health each. Now have their control score, which will be probably 20, which is great. So I like this a lot. So it's very, very fun. She's also got, to add to her survivability, with 9 health, 4 up save, a 4-up ward save as long as she's within the combat range of direwolves. And if you're taking her, you're also taking direwolves. So you can make a very thematic army with a bunch of direwolves and her, and that's very fun. Okay, I'm just hearing that direwolves come in 5s, not 10s. So you can only get 10 direwolves, but either way. But then if she does have that 4-up ward save, then she has to, any damage she takes on the 4-up ward save, she has to apply to the direwolf unit, which is fine because you've also got the ability to like bring some direwolves back and stuff. Okay, it's either 5s or 10s, whichever one it is. Let me know in the comments below either way. But I like Belladama. I like a bunch of direwolves. I think that's a really fun list. I think it's super thematic. I think they've done a good job with writing her profile because she's a big support piece. And then she's obviously garbage combat because she's a foot character. Next up, we have another vampire character called Lady Annika, and it's got a pretty cool ability, actually. 5 health, 5 up save, a 4-up ward save, arguably maybe even close to a frontline melee character. Then you read that her profile for combat is 7 attacks. Great. Hit on 3s. Okay. Wound on 4s. Really tragic. Rend 1, damage 2. So not a frontline melee character. However, you can put her into reserve thanks to supernatural speed, and then bring her out of reserve 9 inches away from enemy units thanks to the Starving Nightmare ability. But with the Kiss of the Blade Proboscian? Anyway, at the end of any turn, you pick an enemy unit that was allocated any damage points inflicted by this unit's combat attacks this turn to be the target. You roll a dice, and on a 2+, you subtract 1 from the save rolls for the target for the rest of the battle, which is pretty fun. I like that a lot. That's very cool. So just reduce down armor saves from high wound units. Probably a pretty cheap character, because other than that, it's garbage. So, and can put into deep strike, be a little like knife wielder in the back of the enemy lines, do some battle tactics with them as well. I'm in. Absolutely fantastic. Next up, we have another name character, Kritza the Rat Prince. It's got 5 health and a 5-up save, and it's got a 6-up ward save. Isn't a wizard, which is pretty fun, but is unique. You only have 1 of them. It's got one of the mighty profiles of 5 attacks, 3s, rend 1, damage 2, with crit 2 hits. Now, he's got a cool ability called Scurrying Retreat, where if this unit is in combat, you roll a dice on a 3-up, it can immediately use a retreat ability as if it were your movement phase without damage being inflicted. And you can do this in any combat phase, which means every combat phase, which means you can just pop around trying to do battle tactics, grab objectives, jump on stuff, do some fun things, which is cool. Obviously not be in a fight because he's garbage in a fight, both from output and survivability. But as long as this guy's like 40 points, I'd take him. And then just have fun with it, generally just to be annoying. And then you've got, in any combat phase, the ability to do Verminous Court, where you pick an enemy unit in combat with this unit to be the target. You roll a dice on a 3-up. The target no longer has an Artifact of Power. Now, this would be really good if Artifacts of Power in Age of Sigmar were remotely good. But as we've seen from this book, there's very few options, only 3, and oftentimes those options are pretty weak source. There are occasionally a couple of good artifacts of power for some armies, but this is a really fun ability if they add a bunch of new artifacts of power in the future that are really fun, and you just run around trying to nick it. Again, it's just a 3+, but it's very cool, very fun, very thematic, especially fun for like a little quest you give yourself where you just play in a tournament with a 2,000-point Soulblight Gravelord army, but you have one Kritza the Rat Prince trying to steal people's artifacts and said it's a personal quest for yourself. That's very cool and a very fun thing that you can do, and it's nice that it's in there. The next unit we're going to look at is one of the new models, super fun. It's the Vampire Lord on Nightmare Steed, and they absolutely want you to buy this model, and they absolutely want you to buy Blood Knights. So it moves 12 inches. Okay, it's nice and fast for a cavalry unit. It's got 7 health with a 3-up save and control value 2. Now, isn't good in combat, but that's not the reason he's there with 5 attacks. Ren 2, though, so more than the Sword of Unholy Power that Mannfred has, which is only Ren 1. And I guess he's damage 3 on the charge. So 5 attacks, damage 3 on the charge, Ren 2. I guess it's okay. Right. So he has an ability called For Glory or For Blood, which you use as a reaction to you declaring a charge ability for this unit. It's incredibly long-winded, but what it basically says is that you can countercharge with this unit and you'll get rerolls, right? Also, you can reroll charges on this guy anyway. Anytime this guy charges, rerolls. Okay, perfect. You can countercharge and get a reroll. That's great. Countercharge is an ability to charge in your opponent's turn, cost you 2 command points. But you can also pick a Blood Knights unit wholly within 12 inches. They can also countercharge also with rerolls as well at the same time. Or you can charge with this guy in your turn with rerolls, and a Blood Knight unit holding within 12 inches can also charge with rerolls as well. So as it was pointed out, statistically, thank you to Butt Viking in the chat, statistically worth 6 command points if you were to do that in your opponent's turn, which is pretty fun. And then as well as that, it's got the ability Strike at the Heart. In any combat phase, pick a friendly Blood Knights unit that charges turn is wholly within 12 inches of this unit. Add 1 to the Ren characteristic of that unit's Templar weapons. So now we know that we're going to get charges, reroll charges, counter charges with rerolls, and +1 rend on the charge. In addition, if we were to take something like Vhordrai, then with Vhordrai, we potentially could get pluses to damage as well. So the horse girlies are going to go, shout out to Tori, are going to go crazy for this because you're going to be able to take a lot of Blood Knights and they're going to be very good. Next up, we have the Vampire Lord on foot. Actually, quite fun utility piece for a level 1 wizard. Should cost around 100 points. Got the standard melee profile, which sucks. But it's anti-hero +1 rend. 5 health with a 3-up save. And then it's got this ability, Sanguine Blur, which you do in your hero phase only once per turn. Roll a dice on a 3-up, remove the unit from the battlefield and set up again on the battlefield more than 9 inches from all enemy non-hero units, but more than 3 inches from all enemy heroes. Now, one of the things we were talking about earlier is that some of the spells, specifically like the Strike Last spell, which has quite a long duration, is really difficult to get off because it's 12 inches. Well, now, on a 3-up, you can teleport a wizard within 9 inches and start making a unit strike last. Cast a manifestation is another idea as well, which is fun. So a really fun, interesting tech piece. And I guess in the right situation, you could do a charge, maybe try and kill a hero as well, kill their valuable wizard that's controlling a manifestation, or is going to do their support casting or something. So genuinely a really fun piece that you could build as a Vampire Lord, a little assassin character that works on a 3-up. Next up, we're going to look at the Mortis Engine. The Mortis Engine is an interesting hero. It's a level 1 wizard, so worth at least 100 points, with a 6-up ward save and a good survivable profile, 12 health, 4-up save, control value of 5, and moves 10. Now, it doesn't have remotely a good combat profile, but it's got 2 reasons that you would take it, and they're not at odds with each other, but I think it means that it will be more expensive than it needs to be for each of the 2 jobs. The first one is a passive, the Nexus of Death Energy, where when a friendly Death Rattle or Deadwalker's unit wholly within 12 inches of this unit is picked to be the target of Deathly Invocation, you add D3 to the number of damage points that can be healed, or the combined health characteristic of models that can be returned, which means if you're running like Direwolves or you're running Skeletons, then you can potentially bring back a lot more models or bigger models to those units than previously, and which is good. So in the support role, that's a really nice piece. But the other thing means, so you wouldn't mind this being a little bit cheaper, on the cheaper end. You got a level 1 wizard. It does this fun thing. It's a big model. But then it has this really pretty fun shooting attack where it's got the reliquary, where when you set this model up, it has 1, a dice next to it with a 1. And every time a Soulblight Gravelords wizard, wholly within 12 inches, or just within 12 inches, successfully casts a spell, then you can turn that dice up until you get to a maximum of 6. Then in the shooting phase, you can only do it once as well, so you can't take multiples of these. You can pick up to 3 enemy units within 10 inches, roll a dice for each target. On a 3-up, you can inflict an amount of mortal damage on the target equal to the unit's stored energy dice. So potentially 18 mortal damage, but realistically, you're only going to hit 2 targets, so you can do like about 8 mortal damage. So I guess all of that comboed together also is a nice package where it kind of does a bit of everything, but it doesn't really necessarily singularly fit. So it's only really going to work, I would say, if you're already running a lot of Skeletons and you're planning on going down that route, Skeletons or Direwolves or something. And then the shooting I would see as a bonus. Otherwise, you've just got a very survivable 12 health 4-up save wizard. Our next hero is the Coven Throne. Again, one of these like tower models, 12 health with a 4-up save. It's got a wizard level 1, so already worth 100 points, and then 6-up ward save. So pretty unique in that it both buffs vampires and Death Rattle and Deadwalkers. So it depends what you want to really do here. Not good in combat, so it's not worth talking about that. But what it does, it has a passive called Tactical Insight, where a friendly Death Rattle or Deadwalkers unit, wholly within 6 inches of it, has a 5-up ward save. Now, 6 inches is pretty close, but 5-up ward save on what can be a lot of wounds and bodies on the board is actually really nice. So if you can get it in range, this has got the fly keyword, so you're going to have to measure it quite a bit and try really hard, but you can make your units which can come back from the dead, and models can come back into units at quite a prodigious rate. Now they've got a 5-up ward save. You can really build something that's very difficult to shift. Now it becomes a little bit two-tone because of its once per battle in your combat phase ability, a Promising Concoction, where you pick up to 3 friendly vampire units wholly within 12 inches of this unit to the targets. You add 1 to the attacks characteristic of the target's melee weapons for the rest of the turn. Now, this isn't that big a deal on heroes, although I'm sure some people would love to give Vhordrai even just 1 extra attack. But on Blood Knights, as an example, or Askurgan Trueblades, as another example, +1 attack is good because there's more models in the unit. And obviously on the charge, those units are also really effective as well. They get +2 damage, you get +2 rend if you take them in the battle formation, so you could really pump them up. Do I want to spend all those points for a once per battle, adding the extra damage? Maybe yes, maybe no. It depends. Like in some cases, you want to absolutely obliterate the unit that you're fighting. That's the goal. And especially for if you're running Vhordrai and you're running Blood Knights, because if you do obliterate a unit with some Blood Knights, as an example, or the Askurgan Trueblades, then you're going to be able to activate Vhordrai's ability to potentially give them +1 damage, which makes them even scarier. So I think interesting. It probably won't end up making it into the list because it's just another 5 Blood Knights probably. But it does have the ability to upscale them, which is very fun. And a really cool piece. I should also mention as well, it's got the ability with the Scrying Pool as a passive that if a unit of Soulblight Gravelords does a redeploy wholly within 12 inches, then another unit of Soulblight Gravelords can do a redeploy for free, costing no command point, which is not something I'm that bothered about. But yeah, Coven Throne is interesting. Great model as well. Our next hero is a White Lord on Skeletal Steed. 7 health, the 3-up save. Not good in combat. +1 damage on the charge, but I'm not too bothered. You add 1 to charge rolls for Death Rattle Cavalry while they're wholly within 12 inches of this unit, and has got a fight simultaneously. A lot of heroes have this. Fight simultaneously with a unit of non-hero Death Rattle Cavalry. So that's going to be your Black Knights or your Barrow Knights or whatever they're called. Unit. It's not very good. Just don't take this. So the Wight King on Skeletal Steed is very easy to confuse with the White Lord on Skeletal Steed, but is much better. 8 health with a 3-up save, moves 10 inches, has a 6-up ward save, and has got 5 attacks that can do damage 3 on the charge with crit mortals. Now, it's important that the King's Relic weapon rolls at least 1/6, because then you get to use the Ancient Barrow Curse, where if an attack made with the King's Relic weapon scores a critical hit, the target unit becomes cursed for the rest of the battle. You subtract 1 from save rolls for cursed units. So you can pick a really scary unit, make them cursed forever, and multiple enemy units can be cursed, reducing their save down by 1. That's good for ongoing combats, which is very nice. And then he's also got the ability Immortal Conqueror, where in your hero phase, you can, for the rest of the turn, pick an objective in enemy territory, and then for the rest of the turn, or terrain feature, an objective or a terrain feature within enemy territory. And for the rest of the turn, add 1 to hit rolls for attacks made by friendly Death Rattle units while they're wholly within 6 inches of that objective or terrain feature. Perfect. And then, so what do we think of him? I think the fact that you can debuff an enemy unit save really effectively is very nice. Very, very good. Obviously, just ups the rend of your whole army, which is very, very cool. If he's cheap enough to go around and be doing that, that's fun. Doesn't bring any other support to the army. But yeah, not too bad. Our next Wight King is on foot. 5 health with a 3-up save and an average combat profile. Actually, a little bit worse because he hits on 4s. The reason you're going to take the Wight King is for 2 reasons. 1, he's got an ability called King of the Shambling Bones, where you pick a friendly Death Rattle unit within this unit's combat range to be the target. You roll dice on a 3+. The target's melee weapons have crit 2 hits. Really nice unit of skeleton warriors you can do that with. You're not going to pick probably the Barrow Guard because they probably have crit mortals or something on their scroll. So that's not as good. Unfortunately, but a bunch of skeletons, maybe you want to go for that. And then he's also got the Ancient Strategies ability, where he fights at the same time as a unit of Death Rattle infantry, and then gives them +1 to hit, which is nice. Many of these fight simultaneous abilities don't give you any bonuses, which means they're just absolutely garbage. But getting +1 to hit is good for free. You can spend a command point for +1 to hit, or you can fight simultaneously with this guy, which is kind of fun as well. The crit 2 hits is also cool. So if you can make skeletons work, a lot of skeletons, that's a nice bonus to add to them. Which could be very, very fun. Our last hero, it's almost all over, is a Necromancer. It's got 5 health, a 6-up save, moves 5 inches. Now, the reason you're going to take the Necromancer is because of the Fight Twice ability, but we should also mention it's got the ability to get a 4-up ward save when near Death Rattle or Deadwalker units while within 3 inches, which is good, but they still take the damage. It's also a level 1 wizard for casting spells, which we love. But thanks to Van Hell's Dance Macabre, which is once per turn in your combat phase, you can pick up any Death Rattle or Deadwalker's unit holding within 12 inches of this unit to be the target, roll a dice on a 3-up. The target can use 2 fight abilities this phase. After the first is used, however, the target has Strike Last for the rest of the turn. But you have the ability to put Strike Last on your opponent, thanks to the spell law, which you can cast from here as well. Now, this is not a spell, so it's just an ability, but it does cost you a command point, and you've got to roll a 3-up. So it's a bit of a risky situation, and you only get 1 chance at trying to make it happen. But it does mean you can make a very, very strong fighting Death Rattle or Deadwalker unit, which is good. And I think people will still try to make this happen. And ultimately, a wizard costs about 100 points. So if the Necromancer is like 120, this is basically, you get a free shot at trying to make this thing happen. But you probably are going to build it into your list. You're probably going to aim to do this versus not have it. I think some people will be disappointed because this previously was a spell. This is probably not more reliable, but maybe a little bit better. Your opponent can't dispel it, as an example. So yeah, still good, still there. You can still make units fight twice, which is great. We're going to move on to the units, and now we're going to get to look at some of our units or upgraded units or new units. The Barrow Guard is the first unit I'm going to look at. It's an infantry frontline unit, and they are 10 models, upgradable or reinforceable to a unit of 20. 1 health each with a 4-up save. Now, that's not too great, and I'd want that to be a little bit cheaper, but their combat profile is pretty good. 2 attacks per guy, 3s and 3s, rend 1, damage 1. Obviously, we know with Van Hel's, we could potentially get piling attack twice. We also know that we can get plus attacks, pluses to hit, and plus rend from different sources all across the book, as well as making our opponent strike last. But in addition, they've got a passive called Guardians of the King, where while any friendly Soulblight Gravelords infantry heroes are within this unit's combat range, both this unit and the friendly units have a 5-up ward save. So this could be a very, very strong kind of frontline objective holding unit. 20 guys with 41 attacks doing crit mortals, potentially piling and attacking twice for 82 attacks is a lot, maybe, if it all works for you. But you got to do a lot of things. You got to cast a few spells, do a command ability, roll some 3-ups. Maybe you got Mannfred nearby, adding some extra attacks. So there's some fun stuff there for sure with the Barrow Guard. I like them. They're probably going to get outshone because they're slow movement. We know we can make them a little faster thanks to things like Nephi. Are we going to see that? Probably not. But I wouldn't be against trying it out at least. Our next unit are Barrow Knights, which you're definitely going to take over the Barrow Guard. So Barrow Knights are a cavalry unit, 5 models, reinforceable up to unit of 10. Each model's got 3 health each. So reinforced unit is 30 health, which you're going to learn firsthand soon on a tabletop. They got 4-up save and they move 10 inches. Control value of 1 per model. I probably should immediately talk about their passive, the Knights of the King. While any friendly Death Rattle or cavalry heroes are within this unit's combat range, both this unit and those friendly units have a 5-up ward save. That would put this unit of Barrow Knights at 30 health with a 4-up armor save and a 5-up ward save. However, obviously, being Death Rattle and only 3 health, potentially you could also bring some back with Van Hel's or a rally to bring some models back into this unit. But not Van Hel's, sorry, I mean Deathly Invocations is what you can do, which is your battle trait. But also they've got at the end of any turn, Cursed to Rise Once More. You can return 1 slain model to this unit, and that isn't once per army. So if you were to take, I don't know, just off the top of my head, 3 times 10 or 30 of these Barrow Knights, that means you can return 1 to each unit, and which is pretty good. That's 9 health back across your army. Also, obviously, if you kill a unit of 10 somehow, then a unit of 5 could come back from one of your grave sites, which is fun. And then on the charge, and actually in the fight, and I forgot to talk about that, they can do some good stuff. So you've got 2 attacks each with +1 damage on the charge and crit mortals. They do hit on 5s and they're only rend 1, so it's not crazy amount, but obviously also I think so you can also obviously make them pile and attack twice on the charge as well, thanks to Van Hel's Dance Macabre. So excellent. And if you've ever seen me talk about alpha pins, I've got a video on my Patreon about it. Yes, you're most likely to see people alpha pinning with these, bringing models back, just being a menace, being a problem, making it so you can't move, score objectives, do tactics, as well as doing some output. So pretty good. Our next unit is a Corpse Cart. 7 health, 6-up save. Nothing to talk about in combat. It's a support piece, and its job is to use the passive Locus of Undeath, where melee weapons used by friendly Deadwalker units have crit auto wound while they're wholly within 12 inches of this unit. And talking about Deadwalker units, we have Deadwalker Zombies. They come in 20 and upgradable to unit 40. Got 1 health, 6-up save. They've only got 1 attack each. However, each time a model in this unit is slain, then you can pick a unit close to it. On a 6+, you can inflict a mortal wound back. So a lot of zombies, holding objectives, not a good armor save, and you're doing mortals back. You know, at one point, definitely the menace of the game, but you can't bring enough of these back. You can't do enough recursion in the army. I think these are going to be super integral to how you want to play. Definitely more like more of a skeleton-based army and vampire-based army now than what it was with zombies. So Direwolves is the next unit we'll look at. Direwolves is a unit of 10, reinforceable up to a unit of 20, with 2 health each and a 5-up save. That's a lot of health you can put on an objective. They do have that beast ability, which means that they've only got a control score of 1. But we know we can get rid of that if we decide to take Ivya Volga, which is very cool. Also, because they're Deadwalkers and you run a corpse cart nearby, you can give them crit auto wound, and a unit of 20 is going to have 40 attacks, which is quite a lot. So very nice, in my opinion. They've also got a passive on the hunt. This unit can use run ability and still use charge abilities in the same turn, and they move 10 inches. So now you've got, and also we know if we take something like, we know we can get some pre-game moves and some early moves. We can also use the Lash, which we're going to be taking as our heroic trait. So you can have a unit of Direwolves race up the board and pin the enemy in, which is also very effective. And they're also normally super, super cheap, so I like them. Felbats is a unit of 3 models, and they have got 3 health with a 6-up save, but they do move 12 inches. You've got 3 attacks, 4s and 4s, no rend damage, 2. I should also mention that I did point out, quite wrongly, that you can get crit auto wound on the Direwolves. You can't do that because they are a companion weapon. The dogs, even though they're not companioning anybody. I apologize. That's wrong. Don't try to do that. There you go. Okay. Felbats, 3 models, 3 health each, 6-up save. They've only count for 1 on an objective, and they've got the Fleet and Fell passive, where this unit can use charge abilities, even if you use a retreat ability in the same turn. In addition, no mortal damage is inflicted when it retreats. Now, this is an amazing unit for going and scoring objectives. Not objectives, battle tactics. They're just tiny. They're really fast. No one really wants to fight them. When you kill them, you can bring a few back because it's a unit of 3, so you can take a unit of 2. They're normally super cheap. They're really, really effective, but they're good in scoring points, which is how you win the game. But they're not very flashy for killing stuff. Our next unit are Blood Knights. Absolutely killer. Blood Knights is a unit of 5 cavalry, reinforceable up to a unit of 10. 3 health and a 3-up save. So 3 health per model, 30, 3-up armor save. Move 12 inches. They get 3 attacks per model over the Barrow Knights. So that means that their +1 damage and +1 rend on the charge means that they're going to be rend 2 and they're going to be damage 2 as well. Now, don't forget, you can get additional damage if you decide to take Vhordrai with them as well after they've wiped a unit out, which is pretty scary. In addition, they've got an ability called Riders of Ruin. When this unit moves, it can pass through models in enemy infantry units, and it can pass through the combat ranges of enemy infantry units, but it cannot end a move in combat unless specified in the ability used. So now you've got the ability to Riders of Ruin around, and if you do move through a unit, you've got an ability called Trample to Dust any charge phase. Pick an enemy unit that this unit passed across this turn to be the target, roll D3 and inflict that amount of mortal damage. So obviously a bunch of these units running around, charging, fighting, having a good time is very, very scary. Obviously in the battle formation, you're also going to get +1 to wounds. So now your Templar weapons can also be like, with all that attack, can be 2s and 2s, damage 2, could be damage 3, could be rend 3. So you can do some absolutely nutty stuff with these fellas. Which is very good. So next up, we're going to look at Vargheists. Vargheists is a unit of 3 models, reinforceable up to unit 6. They've got 4 health each, but only a lowly 5-up save. But they do move 12 inches, and to help them move around the board, they've got an ability called Death's Descent, where once per turn in your movement phase, if this unit is not in combat, you can remove it from the battlefield and set up again on the battlefield more than 9 inches away from all enemy units. Now, if this unit is cheap enough, that's legit a great ability to be jumping around and trying to do battle tactics and some other stuff. And then in combat, they're not too bad. They've got 3 attacks each, 4s and 3s, rend 1, damage 2. Almost the same stat line as a hero, but there's obviously 3 of them. So you're going to have like 9 attacks with crit 2 hits, and a champion 10 attacks, which is kind of okay. So in the right situation, if Vargheists are cheap enough, as a utility piece for scoring points, threatening terrain pieces at the back of the board, you know, like your Loon Shrines and stuff, I think the Vargheists could be an okay pick. Next unit we're going to look at are the Askurgan Trueblades. So they are a Warcry Warband kit, which means they've got an odd number of models, 8 models in the unit, with one of the 8 being a little beastie. Now, they've got 2 health each on a 5-up save, so they're not very survivable because that 5-up save is pretty rough. They move 6 inches, and they're like a kind of a specific fighting unit directed towards monsters. Their weapons, they've got 2 attacks each, 3s and 3s, rend 1, damage 1, but they get +1 rend against monsters, and they always have crit 2 hits. Then the little fella that they've got, his name is a Curse Blood, has got 5 attacks, 4s and 3s, Rend 2, damage 1. So not super scary, but they do have the vampire keyword. So it does mean that in the right situation, if you wanted to try and make it happen, you can get +1 damage on them from our man Vhordrai, which is fun. Okay, so then in any combat phase, you can use the gut-wrenching howl, which is pick an enemy unit in combat with a curse blood. On a 4+, the target has strike last for the rest of the turn. Now, this isn't limited to 1 per army, so there's an argument, if they're cheap enough, to maybe try and get a couple of these units whipping around, charging into enemy units to try to make them strike last before you hit them with some of your other bigger pieces. You've also got access to a spell that does that, obviously in the core spells. And also, you know, things like Vhordrai and Mannfred have got the opportunity to always get strike first as well for them. So there's a lot of like strike first, strike last available in this book for you to play around with. I guess you maybe could bring these as a support for more of your like death rattle skeleton builds so that strike last is still there. Then you've also got the Creed of the Askurgi Renkai, where you subtract 1 from hit rolls for combat attacks made by enemy monsters that target this unit, and +1 to hit rolls for combat attacks made by this unit that target enemy monsters. That +1 to hit is probably not going to save them, but as long as they're cheap enough, they might be a fun utility piece to play with. So that's the whole book, actually. Now, obviously, we've got the Army of Renown, which I'm going to cover in a separate video, and Regiments of Renown, mainly because I'd like to be more hyper-focused on those and hopefully kind of like, you know, get a bit more gritty on that. What do I think? Well, obviously, most of this is some sort of like copy from the Battle Pack, as most of these books are, which, for having recorded now for nearly 4.5 hours along with the Twitch chat, it's a little bit disappointing, ultimately, that you're just kind of covering the same ground. But I am reminded that there is a lot of stuff in this book which seems to be very close to greatness. You do have Pile and Attack twice. You've got Strike Last in several places and Strike First. The new skeletons seem super strong. I won't lie. The Barrow Knights especially, that 5-up ward save causing all sorts of issues, I'm going to say. You got tons of wizards, special characters. You've also got fun war scrolls. A lot of armies are going to be mad as hell that you as a Soulblight Gravelords player could actually just build some fun lists. You could do some fun stuff with Radukar, Kritza, Lady Annika as well. You can really do some like very interesting stuff, and those kind of like fringe 100-point, 150-point characters, you know, you could have some real fun with as well. Your general troops are pretty fun. Like you got good combat pieces all over the place and okay armor saves. And then your manifestations can be kind of interesting, I guess. You could always do Big Pop and Nagash as well. So overall, I think it's quite a wide book, a lot of options. You could do all direwolves, all skeletons, all cav. Then you can go all vampires as well. So you can even do a big monster mash, I reckon, and run around and have a good time with it. So I think that that's a legitimately good thing about this book. Currently, at time of recording, the win rate for Soulblight Gravelords isn't very good, and this army specifically isn't very different to what it was previously. You've got the added bonus, I guess, of the terrain features. We'll have to see. Sometimes terrain features can be a liability versus a bonus. But I remember the last time I did the Soulblight Gravelords book, I was positive about the book. And I still think I'm positive now. I'm not really sure why. I think maybe I'd like to put them on the tabletop because I was super positive and upbeat about it. So I'd really like to, you know, break this down more in the future. And obviously we've got the Army of Renown, which I'm sure already, if you're watching this video, you've heard is absolutely really good. So I'm excited to look at those. So thanks for watching my video. I hope you enjoyed it. Thanks to the Twitch chat. Thank you to everyone who supports me on Patreon. I can't make this content without that support. You helped me do that. So thank you to them specifically. Hope you enjoyed the video. Let me know in the comments below. Loads of love. See you soon.